Hey everyone, welcome to the Basketball and Beer Podcast, where we talk NBA basketball, drink craft beer, with a special focus on the Chicago Bulls, because that's my team. Make sure to subscribe if you like NBA conversation, discussion, news, and rumors, because that's what we'll be doing every time here on the Basketball and Beer Podcast. A few topics that we're going to touch on today is Trae Young and his season opener and what a stud he's been the start of the year. We're going to talk about a young and up-and-coming NBA team and whether or not they might find themselves in the lottery yet again this year. Bulls topics, we're going to talk about the way they've started the season. They're 2 games in, starting 1-1, so we're going to touch briefly just on how they've played, expectations, and how a few of the guys have done so far. All right, so what I'll be drinking today is Founders All Day IPA. It's 4.7% alcohol by volume, so it's a lighter beer, but it's a good IPA. It's not one of my absolute favorites, but it's a nice beer, and that's what I'll be drinking today. All right, so make sure to hit subscribe, like I said, if you like NBA basketball. And let's start out talking about Trae Young. So he dropped 38 points, 9 assists, and 7 rebounds against the Detroit Pistons on his opening night. More impressive even than those numbers is the way that he did it. He was entertaining to watch the entire game. I didn't get to watch the whole thing, but I watched the highlights, and he was hitting at least 3 of his three-pointers. They might as well have been from half court. He was genuinely right in the middle of the three-point line and the half court line. He was just throwing them up there, and they looked good. It looked like he was shooting free throws out there. So he's right up there with Steph Curry when it comes to range. I will go as far as to say he's just as good as Steph Curry in terms of how far out he can step back and shoot the 3 ball with confidence and actually knock it down. So right after this podcast, go ahead and watch the rest of this podcast first. But right after, I want you to go on Google or YouTube and put in there Trae Young highlights game 1 of the 2019 season against the Detroit Pistons. You won't regret it because he's becoming quickly one of the most exciting players in the NBA. He's got superstar written all over him, which is interesting because back before he got drafted, there was a lot of conversation with his size. Would he be able to make it in the NBA? He had a very impressive college season where he was putting up insane numbers, both scoring and assist-wise. But a lot of people questioned, would he make it in the NBA due to his defense and not really being able to guard anybody? So it's funny to kind of go back and look at what some people were saying, thinking he wouldn't make it, he'd be a garbage player. He's a superstar in the making. That Atlanta Hawks team is young, but between him and John Collins and DeAndre Hunter, and Cam Reddish, he's not looking great so far, but they've got a young squad. They're going to be fun to watch. They're going to be an NBA League Pass kind of team that even non-Atlanta people are going to want to watch them play because Trae Young is so exciting. Now, he'll forever be linked to Luka Doncic because they had that draft day trade where the Mavs traded up and grabbed Luka Doncic, and Atlanta dropped back, picking up an extra draft pick and grabbing Trae Young. It worked out for both teams. Luka himself killed it that first game. He had 30-something points his first game of the season too. So both of these teams won. Superstars, fun guys to watch. A young and up-and-coming team that is facing some bad news, and I feel for them a little bit, the Phoenix Suns. Now, nobody was expecting them to make the playoffs by any means. They're in the tough Western Conference, but a lot of people were expecting them at the very least to take some steps forward. They got a lot of young, really talented guys. DeAndre Ayton was the number 1 pick in the draft last year, had a good season numbers-wise. You got Devin Booker, who's a scoring machine. And then they pulled in Ricky Rubio this year to be that veteran point guard presence. And already in game 1, he showed that he's going to have a big impact on that team. Unfortunately, DeAndre Ayton is going to be out for 25 games starting immediately due to testing positive for some supplement that's a diuretic and is banned in the NBA. I don't know much about the supplement or what it was, but that's going to be a huge hit for the Suns. If they were hoping to show some progress and get some more wins this year and maybe be close to making the playoffs, 25 games without DeAndre Ayton is not going to help that cause. They're probably going to find themselves back in the lottery yet again because they're going to struggle without him. Jumping into Bulls topics. Excuse me for 1 second. Again, Founders All Day IPA. Founders is a good company. They make a lot of good stuff. Bulls news. So we talked previously on this podcast about Lauri Markkanen and who he is. Is he a superstar? Is he a role player? Preseason, he kind of was showing that he looked like a role player. Of course, the Lauri that we know comes out on opening night and drops 35 points, 17 rebounds. Those are all NBA numbers. He looked like a star, and he was he's not great in the post, but he was scoring inside. He was driving to the hoop. He had a beautiful mid-range game where he's not amazing if he's gonna like post up and try and back a guy in, but if he's 8 feet out and he's got his back to the basket and somebody on him, he can just turn around and knock down that mid-range jumper. That's what I want to see more of from Lauri. And how does he follow that up in game 2? I think he finished 11 points, 9 rebounds, but he was just chucking 3-pointers and missing and missing and missing. Lauri, get in that mid-range post and just do that little turnaround fade. You got to work on your Dirk game because you saw in game 1 when you did it, you dominated. Keep it up. Zach in game 1 kind of was a no-show. I'm not going to read more into this than needs to. I'm going to cut the guy a break, but to be honest, he didn't really show up. It seems he put a lot of pressure on his back in terms of being a leader, and he didn't show up, and he made some bad decisions right there at the end of the game. Bulls were playing from behind. Well, they take the lead. They're up by 10 points with like 5 minutes to go, and they just cough it up. And Zach just kind of a boneheaded play. There's like 10 seconds left, down by 3, and he's one of the best 3-point shooters in the NBA. Instead of pulling up for 3, he can get his shot off against anybody. He quickly drives to the basket, scores a 2. There's 3 or 4 seconds left, and we don't get a foul in time, and the game's over. So it's game 1 of the NBA season. Hopefully he gets that mental mistake out of the way and learns from it right off the bat, and down the road makes some smarter decisions. There are cases where you can be down by 3 and go for a quick 2. That just wasn't one of them. So it is what it is. Keys to the Bulls season. I'm not too worried about their offensive game. They have a lot of talented offensive players. One of them's bound to show up each night. They're going to score okay. Where they really need to lock in is their defensive rotations, rebounding, and their decision-making, which we just touched on. Now, those 3 things, defensive rotations, rebounding, decision-making, that's a key to winning basketball for anybody. But the Bulls in particular this year need to really focus on that, closing out on 3-point shooters. And the number one thing for them is going to be rebounding. We're looking kind of soft 2 games in on the inside. Teams are getting some second chance points on us at important junctions in the game. And defense and rebounding, it comes down to effort. To be good on offense, you need a certain level of talent. You need to have, good shooting skills or good ball handling skills, the ability to create your own shot. Things that require some talent. When it comes to defense and rebounding, all that's really required is effort. And that's what we need out of the Bulls if we want to be a playoff team this year. Boxing out, wanting the ball more than the other team, and going hard. That's what they need to do to win, and we're going to struggle. If we are not doing those things, we're going to lose a lot of games. And in these first two games, the other team was just playing harder than us. We looked a little bit lackadaisical, and we were coming from behind in both games. Game 1, we lost because of it. Game 2, we very easily could have lost, but Zach hit fire and Coby White was on fire. So we lucked out and we took game number 2 here, which was an exciting game to watch. Touching on Coby's vision. So his ability to get assists was a big topic of conversation coming out of preseason because he was averaging like an assist a game. But Coby, he has good vision, which we mentioned before. I know he's not putting up giant assist numbers. He did show in game 1, he dropped 7 dimes, so he has the ability to pass the ball and get assists. He's just looking to score first, and that's okay because that's who he is. He touches the ball, he's not even thinking. Instinctually, he's thinking, I'm going to put this orange ball inside that cylinder, and he's good at it, and he does it. So that's going to be his game, is scoring. But he had a pass. Not only did he have 7 dimes in game 1, but in game 2, which I just watched a second ago, he had an around-the-back pass in the third quarter to Chris Dunn. He was driving to the hoop, around-the-back pass. It was really impressive. It was like a highlight play, and it was his left hand just around the back, didn't even look. This guy, Coby White, not only can he score, he has good vision. Won't average 8 assists a game, but over the course of his career, he's a guy who could average 5 assists easily. If the Bulls get off to a bad start, we're 1-1 right now. If we find ourselves like 3-12 or 9-24, just a bad record, Coby White's going to be the starting point guard. He showed he's been our best point guard. If we're winning, I think we'll keep him coming off the bench and closing games just because it's working. So don't fix what's not broken. But if we find ourselves losing, Coby's going to be the starter. He's been our best point guard. He's been one of our best players. Him, Zach, and Lauri have all put up some big games, but Coby's the only one who, out of the 2 games so far, had good games both times. Zach struggled the first game and Lauri played great. Coby was good. Second game, Zach was on fire. Lauri didn't really show up too much. Again, Coby really, really good. Zach in game 2, he was scoring in his sleep. It was the third quarter and he had like 30-something points, and I didn't even realize, or he might have had 26. I didn't even realize he was in his 20s at that point. That's how easy Zach Lavine makes scoring look. He can get a bucket anytime he wants, so I'm not really worried about him. And props to Zach. He had 3 steals in that game. He had a couple of really nice closeout where he challenged shots, almost got a nice block on somebody, but he affected the shot. So props to Zach for that. So all said and done, Bulls are 1-1. It's been a little nerve-wracking to watch because you can tell that they're a young team. And I was surprised to hear, if I'm not mistaken, they're the second youngest team in the entire NBA. It was the second or third. I think the second youngest team in the league, which is amazing because it just shows we're going to make some of those silly mistakes because we're young. But if this group can continue to improve, we're a young squad with a lot of talent, and we're in the Eastern Conference. We can make the playoffs this year, and if we keep improving, sky's the limit over time. So that's the podcast for today. Take a moment here. If you want to close your eyes, close your eyes. If not, no worries, but take a nice deep breath. And take a moment just to be grateful for whatever you got in your life, for the ability to breathe, for having family, friends who love you, your health, whatever it may be. Just take a moment to be grateful and remember that that's what really counts. Beer is good. Basketball is great. But treating people right is what really matters. Be kind, be you, and don't forget to hit subscribe so we can keep talking NBA basketball, drinking craft beer, and talking about the Chicago Bulls. Have a wonderful night, everybody. I will see you guys next time.